Bolsonaro has been at home since March 24th after being discharged from the hospital following 2 weeks hospitalized with bacterial pneumonia. The house arrest period ends on June 25th. What do you think? Will he end up in jail or not? I don't think he will. I think he'll stay where he is, silent and quiet, melting just like Flavio Bolsonaro on social media. That's where, right? It has to be, huh? Prisoner convicted, it has to be that way, doesn't it? Meanwhile, in the Hall of Justice, how's it going, guys? The scale 6x1, for God's sake. The president of the CCJ, Otto Alencar, just spoke in the Senate about this situation. Hey, Davi, it's Al Columbre. Get things moving, Davi Colombo, Al Columbre. I don't understand you. Quid pro quo, right, Davy? You're not going to run in the election now. You already have your re-election in another 4 years guaranteed. So you're making a fuss, right? Let's see what Otto Alencar said. I haven't seen it yet. It just happened. Let's watch it together.
He still hasn't sent the constitutional amendment that was reviewed and approved in the federal chamber. He hasn't sent it. What I have here is a constitutional amendment that was submitted by the senators. There's another amendment that has already been approved here in the CCJ, Dupin. It's in Davy's hands. There are 3 constitutional amendments, but he hasn't sent the one from the chamber. I'll handle this only when the chamber's amendment reaches the CCJ. Since I haven't talked to Davy about this recently, because I respect his time, so he'll respect mine. So I'm not going to bring up this subject. He'll send it when he thinks it's the right, appropriate time. There's no problem with me. My relationship with him is very good. So I'll just wait for him to send it. Davy hasn't sent it yet.
Davy, that's the problem. Davy Columbre has to forward it to start the process and the proceedings in the Federal Senate for the constitutional amendment to end the 6x1 schedule that was approved in the House of Federal Deputies. And so far, he hasn't forwarded it. He has to forward it to the CCJ. Then the president of the CCJ, Otto Alencar, starts the work in the committee to approve the admissibility throughout the proposal. And so far, Davy Alcolumbre hasn't taken it out of the drawer and hasn't put it up for processing. That's the situation. In fact, Otto Alencar isn't very happy with Davy Alcolumbre. He said he's keeping up appearances and all, but he's really not satisfied. A meeting was scheduled with Davy Alcolumbre. He left Bahia and went there to Brasilia to meet with Davy Alcolumbre. And Davy Alcolumbre simply canceled at the last minute. Look here. Oh, it's not. That's how things are too, right? Alcolumbre cancels the meeting about PEC 66X-1 and irritates the head of the CCJ. Then he said, I left the airport, arriving halfway there, he called, who? Davy Alcolumbre. Actually, it wasn't even him who called. It was his secretary who said later he would talk to me afterwards. And I said, okay, tell him that when he wants to talk to me, he can. The rapporteur, the one from the CCJ, the senator from Bahia also emphasized that the processing of PEC 6, the PEC to end the 6x1 schedule, does not depend on him. Since the proposal has not yet been forwarded by Alcolumbre to the Senate's CCJ, the decision depends exclusively on the President of the Senate, who has already publicly stated that he is in no hurry to review the text approved by the Chamber of Federal Deputies. What's going on? In my view, Davy Alcolumbre still has 4 more years in his term. He's not running in the upcoming elections in October, so he doesn't care at all. Yeah, so he's just trying to look good. Why, Andre? It's so the government will go talk to him and there will be some give and take, release of amendments and all that. That's it. There's no other explanation. That must be what he's doing, you know? He's acting superior, like he's above the government. That's what's happening. Shall we see what the boys said here? That's not it. Hey, call the VAR, call the VAR. Andre, stop messing around. Call the VAR already. Did you ask your question, guys? Highlight it so I can answer at 8 p.m. For God's sake, Pedro talked about this situation with Bolsonaro. His house arrest is almost over. Look here. Pay attention.
Breaking news. Jair Bolsonaro may have to go back to jail, back to prison at any moment. That's because through a decision by Minister Alexandre de Moraes, Jair Bolsonaro was allowed to return home under house arrest for a period of 90 days. However, this period is about to end. And it's no coincidence that yesterday Bolsonaro already started saying he's having stomach pain, that his health condition has gotten worse, whatever, exactly because he's afraid, of going back to his cell. I ask you to share this video as much as possible, because if Jair Bolsonaro was sentenced to 27 years in prison, then he has to serve it here in the cell. None of this house arrest business, because the law in this country is for everyone and it has to be enforced. Share this video as much as you can and let's go after it.
Hey, Pedro, I totally agree with you, but he's not going to do it. He's going to stay on house arrest. Right, Andre? Right? Because he's already 70 years old. He has some problems with hiccups with that thing he has. And another thing, inside Papudinya, there were a lot of Bolsonaro supporters. I'll tell you the truth. Inside Papudinya, there were a lot of Bolsonaro supporters who made Bolsonaro's life easier in terms of visits and all that, blah. So Bolsonaro turned Papudinya, you remember this very well, into an election committee, and he kept bothering people even while he was in prison there. In his house, with him under arrest, he's silent and quiet. He can only receive visits from relatives, so you want to know something? He's not going to Papudinya, no. He will remain under house arrest, which is even better, where he stays quiet and silent. Get the code, my dear, my dear. My little darling belongs in jail, but only under the RDD regime. For him to go back to jail, it would have to be under the RDD regime. What is that, Andre? A differentiated disciplinary regime. He only gets visits from family and his lawyer. Because if it's going to be that nonsense of receiving senators, congressmen, blah, no, for God's sake, I can't stand it. Nobody can stand that kind of situation.
There are lawsuits that are worth it. I just found out that Senator Rogério Marinho, who is the coordinator of Flavio Bolsonaro's campaign, has now called on the Attorney General's office against me, because he got upset that we said here on social media that his alternative PAC project wants to prevent the end of the 6x1 shift schedule. Senator, I'm sorry for your discomfort, but I say it and I'll repeat it. Your alternative PAC is the boss's alternative, and yes, it wants to keep the 6x1 shift. No what else. You even want to make it 7 for 0, 7x0. What do you say about that? Rogério Marinho's PEC, which unfortunately had the signature of 40 senators. The negotiation about the shift schedule can be an individual negotiation between employer and employee. Does anyone think that a negotiation between employer and employee is a balanced negotiation? The employer has the power to fire and the worker is afraid of being fired. That's not negotiation, that's imposition. And there's more. His PEC also legalizes hourly work. If the employer comes and says, I need this worker for 4 hours today, tomorrow I need him for 9, the worker is left at the mercy of an hourly contract. That means if he's less in demand, he'll earn less and will have to find a bunch of odd jobs to make up for it. Does anyone think that's defensible? Let's be honest. Being sued for telling the truth and defending the working class is a huge source of pride.
These people are such crooks, aren't they? This Senator Rogério Marinho, leader of the PL in the Senate, he's the one responsible for Flavio Bolsonaro's campaign. He's doing everything to block approval of ending the 6x1 shift schedule. What a bunch of lazy people, right? Then check how many days he worked in the year, not the month. He actually rested more than he worked. To earn almost 50,000 reais, where do you get a 3-on, 4-off schedule? Honestly, sometimes he only comes to work once a week. And they want the worker to keep working like a dog 6 days a week. So here's what we'll do. Let's do this. Let's put everyone on a 6-on, 1-off schedule. Including you all 6 days a week, you have to be there. In the plenary session, you have to clock in and you have to be there. So let's put everyone on a 6-on, 1-off schedule then. But you don't want that, right? You want an easy life for yourselves. Earning almost 50,000 just to not go to work. Give me a break, huh? Or maybe you're untouchable. Oh, what a shameless bunch. They're just penniless nobodies. As my grandma said, what a shameless bunch. They're just penniless nobodies. Guys, please have some mercy. Go ahead.
Back it up with proof. And today, Intercept brought several documents proving even payments. Imagine that, payments from Vovor Caro from Banco Master to the fund where Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer is the one who regulates and controls this fund. In fact, Eduardo Bolsonaro himself controlled this fund. And today, the Intercept has all the documentation. There's a financing schedule. This schedule covers $24 million, which at the time was exactly the 134 million reais that, according to them, were promised to make this so-called movie. So, these 134 million reais are therefore part of a financing schedule. There are 14 disbursements from January 2025 to January 2026. The first two are for $2 million each, and then 12 installments of $1,660,000. A total of $10.6 million was paid, or 61 million reais. Do you remember, deputies, 134 million reais is what Flavio Bolsonaro was asking Vorcaro for? He claims it's for the movie, but all signs point to it being a bribe. And he had already received, and here is exactly the payment schedule, 61 million reais. The first installment, Mr. President, was paid to Revengate on February 13, 2025. When did Eduardo flee from Brazil? They say he went there to escape the courts. He didn't go there to escape the courts. He went there to control the money that was coming from the shady deals they made with Vorcaro. And he's still there today for that today with his lawyer. It's not a coincidence. He went there to manage the fund, to manage the bribes they were receiving from the scheme and the funds being inflated to the max. Yeah, there's more coincidence. Rio Previdencia, if you look at the payments, look at what came out of Rio Previdencia and went to Banco Master. And what came out of Banco Master to go exactly to the Revengate fund. That's another thing that's not a coincidence. It's the bribe that came, in this case, from Rio Previdencia, which is going to involve the embattled governor or former governor of Rio. And everything he passed on to Vorcaro, and the part from Vorcaro that went to Flavio Bolsonaro, went to Eduardo Bolsonaro. And for film, which is just an album, Intercept proves it, yeah?
And just now we found out that Daniel Vorcaro spilled the beans and revealed that it was a bribe payment. Both for Ciro Nogueira, former minister of Bolsonaro, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro's dream vice president, Vorcaro turned him in the plea testimony. And he also revealed that it was a bribe payment. Who? Claudio Castro, former governor of Rio de Janeiro, removed from office and ineligible, soon to be an inmate, a longtime political ally of Flavio Bolsonaro. It was a bribe payment. The thing is, Daniel Vorcaro is seeing that if he runs, he's in trouble, and if he stays, he's in trouble too. There's nowhere for him to run. He's going to have to spill the beans and say what's behind those payments for the movie. You say, oh, Andre, to produce the movie, guys, the most high-tech, spectacular Hollywood movie you can imagine. It probably didn't even cost what they're claiming this ridiculous, cartoonish Bolsonaro movie cost. So for God's sake, please, please, do you remember this one, huh? Do you remember Brunini? Look at this, folks. The Bolsonarist mayor of Cuiabá, Brunini, is accused of embezzling more than 100 million. The funds were supposed to be used in 2025 according to the constitutional minimum, but were used in 2026 to cover up municipal accounts. The accusation against the mayor was made by Monge at the end of May during a session at the city council. Then you ask me, Andre, who on earth is this Monge? Monge? He was Brunini's Secretary of Education. Do you remember Brunini? All chaos and fighting, a tedious federal lawmaker, annoying as hell. Yeah, he became the mayor of Cuiabá. And now his former Secretary of Education has accused him of embezzling 100 million reais from the education department. When we say some people just can't be saved, they really can't. This guy here, he's practically begging to leave the city hall over there in Mato Grosso because of all the criticism he's facing there. Remember, that's a Bolsonaro supporting place. But the guy is incompetent, and according to his Secretary of Education, he's corrupt. And he embezzled 100 million from the education department in that municipality. When we say there's no saving him, it's because there's really no saving him. Hard to save.
Meanwhile, good news, this Wednesday, President Lula is leading and widening his advantage in both the first and second rounds. Flavio Bolsonaro is falling by the wayside because people are learning the truth. His direct involvement in the Mastro scandal, asking for money, millions. In fact, he doesn't want you to know he went to court to prevent the audio from being released, and people are starting to notice and remember. Only 55% of people know about his audio, so his downfall will be even greater. And President Lula's lead keeps getting stronger and stronger.
Hey, brother, I prefer to send you the audio here so you can listen to it calmly. So if you have any input, any position on this, because we need to know what to do, man, with life.
On the other hand, people know he is a traitor to Brazil, directly involved with Mastro, and supports the 7 days on, 0 days off work schedule. On the other side, we have President Lula, who truly defends Brazil, his people, who makes public policies, who changes people's lives. As they say, he saves up like a sock and also fights for the end of the 6-to-1 scale. So folks, let's keep up the pace, make comparisons, show the truth, because we're going all out and we're going to win in the first round.
Well, the poll that came out today said that more than almost 60% of the population still doesn't know about the audio. In which Flavio Bolsonaro is apparently asking Daniel Volcaro for a bribe. Then Andrea Gonçalves, it went to the movie. Where's the proof or evidence that it went to the movie, for God's sake? There isn't any, guys. There isn't any. Let's face the reality of the facts. Stop being stubborn, for God's sake. So what happened? Nunes Marquez prevented this poll from being released. Look, where Lula almost won in the first round. Lula with 47% and Flavio Bolsonaro with 34%, which was released on May 19th. Then Nunes Marquez came and banned the broadcast. This is being decided by the plenary. The 7 ministers are going to decide. The minister here, Estela, requested a review and the process is suspended. Meanwhile, the broadcast and dissemination of this poll are being prohibited here. Look, share it. It's important. They don't want it to be shown, but we're going to show it. Where Lula has a difference of almost 13 percentage points, but what happens? Are they going to censor all of them? Because today a new poll came out. Here it is, look. And Lula is ahead. Look here, guys. Lula in the first round, 39%, Flavio Bolsonaro, 29%. In other words, Lula is 10 percentage points ahead of Flavio Bolsonaro. And now, will Cassio Nunes Marquez censor it? Vai censurar. This one too, for God's sake. The more censorship, the more we show. You must have already gotten the code. That's right. So you see, it backfires. If you try to ban something, it's worse. If you censor the situation, it's worse, because then we're going to show even more. You understand? By the way, Lindenberg also talked about these polls, so pay attention here. Flavio is tanking.
There's a Quest poll. Lula is surging. He widens the gap. Look, it's a second round scenario. 44 Lula, 38 Flavio Bolsonaro. It was 42-41. In the first round scenario, 39-29. But there's plenty of good news, right? Let's go, here we go. They got tangled up, this whole story about what happened with Flavio Bolsonaro. 65 say that Flavio Bolsonaro made a mistake. The number of supporters there, that 17%, 65, said that Flavio was wrong to ask Grandpa Karn for money. 60% voted. 60% the involvement between the two raises suspicions. 58 believe that the candidate might be hiding something about the case. This here, 58% think the candidate might be hiding something. After so many changed versions, this reinforced the perception of Flavio's involvement in corruption for 62%. Okay? But there's more. Most of the people interviewed, 47% agree with Lula when he said that Flavio Bolsonaro would have asked for a new tariff hike. versus 35% Flavio is the president with the candidate's statement. He who allegedly asked Trump not to impose tariffs. So 47 to 35%. In other words, it ended up on their tab. I'll say more. 47 of the voters. Lula represents the patriotic spirit better than Tarifacio, who didn't request the item. Flavio Bolsonaro appears with 37%.
Bottom line, Flavio Bolsonaro is melting down. The Quest poll came out today, and I want to know if Nunes Marquez will censor this one too. Because really, you can't separate what's happening from the findings of a survey, guys. We live day by day. We live the facts and the reality. It's true, Andre, there is a statement that it wasn't Daniel Volcaro who was asked for money. Did Flavio ask him for money? It's true. Is it true that the money went to Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyers fund? It's true. Is it true that 10 million went there on February 3rd, and at the end of February, Eduardo went to the United States and has been there ever since, living like a king without a salary? It's true. If it's true, it needs to be publicized. It couldn't be publicized if it were a lie, then it couldn't. Did you understand, Nunes Marquez? So he's not going to censor anything anymore, not a single thing. He tested to see what would happen, and what happened? It backfired because now everyone is showing the truth of the matter and what's happening with the polls. That's the situation. Federal Deputy Henrique Vieira also spoke, and it had an impact. Let's see what he says here.
Lula's approval rating dropped sharply among evangelicals, according to the Quest poll. The situation is still very difficult, but it has been showing some change. In the last poll, Lula's disapproval rating was 65%. The approval rating was 30%, and now the disapproval has dropped to 60%, and the approval has risen to 35%. So there has been a significant change that has been confirmed in the latest polls. I've talked a lot about this. Bolsonarism represented and still represents a hijacking, an attempt to hijack the church, turning the pulpit into a partisan platform, turning political debate into a spiritual battle, declaring war and enmity, destroying families, making the church environment toxic for many people. Something that deeply disrespects faith, the church, people's autonomy, and democracy itself. The well-known act of using God's name in vain, treating the evangelical church as a tool for manipulation, and using faith, really using it, manipulating it for personal and electoral gain. It's a huge challenge because they have power, they have leaders, leadership, influence, all committed to this logic. Malafaia, Macedo, and others. People who, I don't know, in my opinion, have forgotten what the gospel of Jesus is. And we keep talking about respect for the church, respect for the secular state, respect for diversity. We don't want Lula to own the church. We want the church to be civically engaged, for the church to be committed to the people and to peace, that promotes, encourages debate, respects people's opinions, and protects the uniqueness of the pulpit. So we don't want to defeat the far right using the far right's own weapons, and I don't want to use faith, something so sacred to the people and to me, as a political or electoral tool. But that's it. Among evangelicals, step by step, with a lot of respect, through dialogue, we are making progress, and the polls are showing that. Let's go with ethics and serenity. Let's talk to our people and face Bolsonarism in this area as well. Warm regards.
Guys, I'm noticing, even from the circles I move in, that evangelicals are tucking their tails between their legs and moving away from Bolsonarism. They're moving away. They're realizing that these people have nothing Christian about them. On the contrary, many are actually criminals, and they're moving away from Bolsonarism. Obviously, there is some resistance on the part of some faith mercenaries, evangelical leaders, faith mercenaries who use faith to make their shady deals for benefits behind closed doors. This exists and will continue to exist, right? In fact, that Karina Gama, for example, hired Silas Malafaya's wife for 18 million. I don't know if you know about this, but do you see the scheme? Karina Gama, the producer of the movie, sole owner of Go Go, which has never made a movie before. The first movie they claim to have made was Bolsonaro's. In her company and in her NGO, she hired Silas Malafaya's wife and paid her 18 million. And if you dig deeper, you'll find many more situations that explain why certain religious leaders insist on continuing to give their support. The issue of Bolsonarism in Brazil. It's because they have or had ties and there's no way to separate it because it's also part of the criminal organization. Because Andre benefited from the group's acts of corruption and now he's got a lot to hide and can't jump ship or he'll get in trouble. That's it. That's the situation. But many evangelicals are leaving. Guys, saying that this money went to the movie when it didn't even go to the movie and they haven't shown any documents so far, for God's sake. This movie was used to launder money for paying bribes. Daniel Volcar just spilled the beans about Bolsonaro's former minister, Ciro Nogueira, who is Flavio Bolsonaro's dream vice presidential candidate, regarding the former governor of Rio de Janeiro, Claudio Castro, a close political ally of Flavio Bolsonaro in Rio de Janeiro. It was a bribe payment. Who said that? Daniel Volcar. And here, look, it's closing in. Soon he's going to turn in the Bolsonaro family. And the Intercept knows a lot more and has a lot more, but they're not going to release everything at once. They're going to release it slowly because otherwise people will forget, right? What they've released is just a little bit. They have to release the evidence gradually so that the Brazilian people don't forget and we have time to spread what happened. And the Intercept released yesterday the payment spreadsheet that went to the Havergate Fund, for which Paulo Carlisto, Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer, is responsible. And it was millions and millions of reais for this fund, which to me is supporting Eduardo Bolsonaro there. And the whole thing is about corruption and bribery payments. And for you, what is it? Everybody's innocent? Innocent? Oh, innocent, right? I didn't know anything. All right. Oh, Jesus. Smash the like button, like, comment, and share. Much love. Join the group here so you don't miss anything. I send all the links before I start the live streams. See you at the next live stream, God willing. Bye.